Yeah. Big yawn.
Yeah.
Big yawn for all of them. But
Yeah.
so far, both sides, not a single person who's come out right now. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Biden, Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott. All of them gets a big yawn.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back to Raw Food.
What's up, Jay? Long time no speak. From the East Coast to the West Coast, a lot has happened in the sabbatical we both took. Congratulations on your new marriage, bro. Beautiful wedding. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent speech. Blew everybody away. And I can't say that I wasn't expecting exactly that, because you're an excellent public speaker. So thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate it.
You're a doll. I don't feel like it was my best work by any means, but like I said, your lovely, fabulous wife's dad crushed us, and I was doing everything in my power just not to ugly cry in front of your friends and family. And what a beautiful venue, by the way. I mean, that sun went down and those lights went up, and it was just stunning. One of the best weddings I've ever been to. Everybody had a great time. Nobody was a wet ass. Appreciate that. Sometimes it's not that hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every now and again.
It's great when you have great people around. So that's what's up. Let's get right into it. We've got a bit of a lightning round to cover. And then I know we want to do a deep dive on the most recent happenings in Ukraine and a very interesting theory from some research you've been doing. So I can just go down our list here. Begin with...
Lots happened since we've talked.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's start with the field of Republican nominees.
Oh, God, where do we start? Nikki Haley, who's of Indian American descent. Her parents are immigrants. She is from the South. She's running for the Republican candidacy. So is Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey, who has an axe to grind with Trump and the Kushner family. He is responsible for putting Jared Kushner's dad in prison for fraud. We have Tim Scott running from the Carolina, African-American gentleman, 50-year-old, unmarried, anti-abortion on any level candidate who seems to think he's got a shot at winning. We also have Asa Hutchinson, who has taken to the stage. We have Governor DeSantis rolling out his form of patriotism from Florida, and none of them are even within 10% of the lead that Trump still holds on the party. Anything to add to that?
I believe that a lot of these people know they have no chance, and they're doing this because they're competing for vice president. I believe Trump, if he wins the nomination, and right now the polling says he would, indictments notwithstanding, he's not going to pick Mike Pence as his vice president.
Oh, yeah. We forgot about my favorite reptilian robot, who is also throwing his hat into the ring, if you will. I'm not even convinced he's a human being. I think he's a hybrid of a robot and a reptile. Mm-hmm. He stands no chance. I mean, this is the guy that his own party was screaming, hang him on January 6th. Or was there another Mike Pence they were trying to hang? I can't remember.
Yeah, they were literally chanting, hang Mike Pence.
Okay.
Also, you might have some token diversity here in terms of the gender and racial makeup of some folks, but none of these people have any ideas that are different than anybody else. All of them are put culture war ahead of everything. None of them really are offering much in terms of policy solutions to the problems in America. All of them are just saying the same culture war stuff. We need more guns. We need God back in classrooms. We need more defense spending, and that's as far as we're getting when it comes to policies. And then culturally wise, it's just all the same stuff. We got to get rid of all the gay people. We got to get rid of all the immigrants, and all those minorities need to just shut up about their rights and stuff. I don't hear or see anything of substance from any of them.
I'm not hearing policy. And to tell you the truth, I'm not hearing policy from either side of the aisle. I'm not hearing what the Democrats tend to do in order to either woo independents or moderate Republicans, the few that are left. I don't even know what candidates the Democrats could roll out at this point, other than so far I know Cornel West, I believe, has announced his candidacy or run for president.
Mm-hmm. As a third
I'm
party.
assuming Kamala will probably throw her hat in the ring. I don't really see a strong candidate right now. I don't think Biden is a strong candidate. I don't think Trump is a strong candidate. What say you? Asa Hutchinson has said he will not run, by the way, of New Hampshire, even though he's got really, really high popularity percentages amongst Republicans and Democrats alike, I must say.
As a Californian citizen, I am sick and tired of seeing Gavin Newsom do everything but announce he's running for president, because he's campaigning all over the country. He's specifically running ads in Florida, campaigning against Ron DeSantis. He's clearly running for president, but he won't just come out and say it. I think he's hoping that Biden will announce that he's not gonna run, because clearly Gavin Newsom wants to already have his infrastructure and name recognition set up. But as a Californian who sees all of these problems in California, specifically in San Francisco, where Gavin Newsom was mayor, I wish he would spend less time trying to raise his national profile and spend more time focusing on California. You know, he's been politically involved in a major power broker in the state for 10, 15 years now. Mayor, lieutenant governor, etc. He has overseen billions of dollars be appropriated for things like high-speed rail in California. We don't have one godforsaken, tofu-eating, saltwater surfing fucking mile of high-speed rail in this state. Not one.
That's
and they
shameful.
have been dangling that in front of us since the 2008 election. It was on the ballot then as a proposition that the entire state got to vote for. Billions of dollars for high-speed rail. We don't have 1 kilometer, not 1 mile, not 1 kilometer, not one. There's no high-speed rail here.
That's shameful. And where was it supposed to go to and fro from?
By now, we were supposed to have high-speed rail from here all the way up to Vancouver. And we were supposed to have it also go from LA to Vegas and Sacramento to San Francisco. Like we should be working on the extensions beyond that point by now, based on the original plans. And that was also like $10 billion ago as well. Now they say, oh, we just need another $20 billion and we should be able to have the rail from San Diego to LA operational by 2026 or 2030 for the rail from LA to San Francisco.
That'd be super dope if you did have a rail from there to San Francisco, to tell you the truth. I mean, that would change how people lived dramatically and where they lived.
Yeah, and we have the technology. I mean, if they can do it in China and Japan and all of Europe, we have the technology to do it. We just have red tape and bullshit, and all of the donor class and all of their friends want to make sure they get their cut. And so it's going to cost, right now the estimate is that it's going to cost $1 billion per mile to build this high-speed rail system, and that is absolute bullshit. That is not how much it actually costs to build the actual track in terms of parts, labor, and materials. That is not how much it costs. It's all the other bullshit.
Yeah. It's all the administrative fees and management salaries that most of funding goes to. Is really pretty shameful. So what do you think it's going to come down to? A Gavin Newsom, DeSantis duel, if you will? I hope. Do you think anybody stands a chance on the Republican Party other than DeSantis at this point? And do you think he stands a chance on the national stage?
Well, just like 2016, we all thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush, and then things shook out very differently. I think there might be a dark horse candidate, a la Trump, who just comes along either on one side of the aisle or the other, or both, and shows up and actually, sweeps away the rest of the field. Because we all just assumed it was going to be Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton back in 2016, and everybody was sick of that. And everybody right now is assuming it's either going to be Biden versus DeSantis, a very old and decrepit Biden at that point, or Newsom versus DeSantis, and no one is excited about that.
No, no one's excited about Biden Trump either. I mean, Jesus Christ. Biden looks like he doesn't even know. He falls more than anybody I know.
I do give him credit. I think he's doing okay with
I do think he's doing okay. He passed the infrastructure bill. I'm all for that. That in and of itself, I mean, I don't know why anybody would be against that. Do we understand what an infrastructure bill is? It means we maintain our bridges. It means we maintain our roads. It means we upgrade our Wi-Fi and our electricity. Like, why would anybody be like, no, that's a bad idea?
Yeah. And like,
there's not enough money in the world to invest in that. We should be investing in that more than anything else.
Yeah. And I don't blame him for the fact that Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin completely derailed the first 2 years of his presidency. And I don't blame him for the fact that since then they lost the Senate. They kept the Senate. They lost the House, and we also lost the Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court is who's blocking the student debt relief stuff.
Absolutely. But that's Republicans have been working on doing that to the Supreme Court since the 60s.
Yeah, which is why Hillary Clinton should have doggone won, right?
She should have seen this coming, to tell you the truth.
She wasn't a perfect candidate, but like a lot of people in swing states were like, I just couldn't vote for Hillary. And Democrats told them, yo, it's not about Hillary, it's about the Supreme Court. And they're like, oh, fuck off. And
that message wasn't clear, though. Republicans focus on, it seems like the Republicans tend to focus on the Supreme Court and the Democrats seem to focus on social justice and the presidency. And the long-term strategy of the Republican Party has won, which was to change the format of the Supreme Court as we know it in our lifetime.
I know on Twitter, and I know that, Hillary, like, and as part of some of her election stuff, she did say, hey, like, we can't mess around with the Supreme Court. But yeah, I think more of her advocates and more people that were out here, being surrogates, people that were out here going on TV, more folks should have really, really pressed upon this issue. You saw how much they fucked around with Obama's nominees. They stole at least one nominee from Obama that he should have had.
Yeah.
Right?
How were they able to do that? They're going to
slam through because Mitch McConnell has more gumption than anybody else in the Democratic Party.
Remarkable.
Mitch McConnell's willing to do some shit and he's willing to be criticized for breaking norms and shit where the Democrats aren't. And also they had the Senate. We haven't had a situation where the Democrats had the Senate, but there was a Republican in office. I don't think that's happened ever since George Bush. And back then, they didn't have the balls to do what Mitch McConnell did, just deny George Bush a Supreme Court.
Yeah, justice. I mean, it was absolutely unprecedented. I believe it is also unprecedented for a vice president to run against his former president in a second election.
Oh,
I don't recall that ever happening in my lifetime.
Yeah. We'll do a deep dive on this field.
Right, also, as things unfold. Right, we still have quite a ways away, but at least so far, those are the candidates who have publicly announced up to this point. Yeah. More pressing.
Big fucking yawn. Big fucking yawn for all of them.
Yeah, big yawn.
Yeah,
big yawn for all of them. But so far, both sides, not a single person who's come out right now. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Biden, Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott. All of them gets a big yawn.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Last thing about Tim Scott, it's just so fucking obvious that he's here to be the fucking Ben Carson or
he is. What's the guy who ran in Georgia? Yeah, the football guy.
Died of COVID. What was his name?
Oh, the pizza guy, Herman
Cain. Yeah, he's here to be Herman Cain who like leads the polls for like 2 weeks so that they can check a box, right?
And say, look, we're not racist.
Yeah, and then it was Ben Carson. Ben Carson was Herman Cain for the 2016 election. Like, correct. And even for the 2020 nomination. No, it was obviously Trump. Yeah. So just wanted to touch on that. He knows his role and he's clearly just vying to be fucking vice president or something. But we will do a deep dive on this field and we'll do a deep dive on the Trump indictment.
Absolutely. Because just to throw that out there, that's also a big yawn for me.
Word.
Big
Cool.
yawn. Actually, that's more of a yawn than anything else. I mean, they're gonna turn this guy into a martyr. This guy's got more indictments against him than Hannibal Lecter. I mean, can we get this show on the road?
Yeah, well, he's already a martyr with his core fans, right? Like,
yeah, well, this indictment after indictment after indictment that turns out to nothing is only feeding that. And now it's really making it look like the guy's just getting harassed.
Well, these indictments take a very long time. His first set of indictments, he's not going to trial for that until next year. It's a very long discovery process for something this serious. And I'm glad they're taking their time.
Black people have gone to prison for less and a lot faster. Moving on to the continuing ridiculousness of this weird planet we're on called Earth. Jesus Christ. Do you think we've given the Ukraine enough money, or is it not enough?
I think we overplayed our hand, and there was a chance that we could have gotten peace a few months ago, maybe a few months ago, 6-ish months ago, when Russia was on the back foot, and we could have struck a peace deal. And people were asking Zelensky, why don't you strike a peace deal and, just let them keep Crimea? And he said, basically like, why would we give Russia this peace right here? The thing is, ever since then, because we didn't strike this peace deal that it seems like could have been made from what I've read, but who knows? Since then, Russia has re-upped, they've redoubled their efforts, and now they've blown up a dam. And Russia has made it clear they will keep this going to 2024, 2025, 2026. Please. And at that point, the American appetite to continue to give money is they're not going to have the appetite for that anymore. And they're also embracing total war. They've already done a handful of massacres in Bucha, for example. They just went out and massacred civilians. They're also grabbing Ukrainian kids and taking them to Russia and shit. They are doing horrible things, okay? But most recently,
there's no disputing that, but there is a conversation that needs to be had, or at least said, that do other countries have a right to their own autonomy? And at what point do we get involved? And if the line in the stand for U.S. involvement is human atrocities, then why aren't we starting in Haiti, which is, a few hundred miles off our border, if that?
Yes.
That's my question.
Yes.
Why do we care so much about there?
And right? We pick and choose which ones we get involved in.
And that's my issue. It's not that if we're going to get involved for humanitarian issues, which this country, by the way, has no history of doing, then sure. But since this country has no history of doing that, I have no reason to believe that because of that precedent, they'd be doing that now. But let's discuss a few facts about the Ukraine. Something that we need to keep in mind, to your point, when you started this conversation, is that a lot of this is tied up with Putin's takeover of Crimea, right? So he annexed Crimea in March of 2014. And in response to that, the US and it's pretty much its NATO allies imposed a series of sanctions on Russia. And we have never acknowledged or recognized the fact that Russia has done that. And the significance of that is not only the extension of Russia's territorial landscape, if you will, but it's the only time that a European nation has used military force to take over another country since World War II. So that's just something that we need to keep in mind. But why is the Ukraine so important in the first place, outside of the fact that Russia just wants to expand its territories? And there's several reasons for that.
Mm-hmm. Talk about
First of all, the Ukraine has the feeding capabilities of 600 million people.
Breadbasket.
It is a natural resource for food that's grown.
Yeah. Time out real quick. I know people are thinking you're probably picturing a map right now. Russia's huge. Ukraine is to the south of Russia, so it actually has a much better climate for growing a ton of food. I know when people think Russia, they think snow, they think things aren't going to grow there. A lot of things grow in Ukraine, and they used Ukraine to feed the rest of the Soviet Union back in the day.
Yes, true. The Ukraine ranks first in uranium ores in Europe. They rank second in titanium reserves, 10th in the world. They have the second amount of iron ore reserves in the world. They are second in Europe in having mercury, third in Europe in gas, fourth in the world in natural resources, seventh in the world in coal reserves. And up to this point, as far as my research has shown, we've given the Ukraine 45 billion, and somewhere we are heading to upwards of 120 billion. That's extraordinary, considering that allegedly this country is in a recession.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. Just like us and Taiwan, and how Taiwan is home to TSMC, which is one of the best semiconductor manufacturers and several other semiconductor manufacturers for the entire world. And so it's of strategic importance. Ukraine is of strategic importance. Why did Putin want Crimea? Well, because by owning Crimea, the entire Russian fleet now has access to the Black Sea and thereby the Mediterranean Sea. Immediate access without necessarily needing to, strike a deal with, say, with a Gulf country or something, right? Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. We pick and choose the problems and the crises and the conflicts that we get involved in, even though I still...
Right, like why didn't we get involved when the Crimean parliament seceded to break from the Ukraine and join Russia? I mean, they were under Russian duress when they did that. We didn't jump in then. And it's because the resources that we need are primarily on Ukrainian soil, not even on Crimean soil, which neighbors the region. And because of that, that only, emboldened Russia to gather troops on the Ukrainians' border. And the shameful part about it is that in 2014, on the heels of all of this happening, there was a quote unquote deal negotiated between the Ukraine and Russia. It was called the Minsk Agreement, and it was signed between Russia, Ukraine, France, and Germany. They met in Belarus, and it was supposed to be like an let's stop killing each other agreement. And the deal between Russia and Ukraine was supposed to be, sort of like a ceasefire. But before the year even ended, the violence continued and the deal was compromised.
Right. In Donetsk and Luhansk, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, hold on. Let's also add a little bit of history here, because Russia and Ukraine have had beef, and Russia's, kind of constantly, going all the way back to the czars and shit. Russia has kind of constantly believed that they were entitled to, dominance of Ukraine. They've always wanted it to be either a vassal state or for it to be part of Russia. So there's anxiety amongst Ukrainians going all the way back then. Russia didn't want, Russia tried to get Ukrainians to stop speaking Ukrainian and just only have them speak Russian. So there are beefs that go way, way back. So there's an anxiety, there's a mistrust there. And then also, when the Soviet Union fell apart, there were Soviet fucking nuclear missiles in Ukraine at the time. Now, people were worried that the folks who actually know how to handle these missiles might be dead, might be leaving, don't know what's going on, and it'd be really fucked up if one of these nukes fell into hands that were unofficial or whatever. And so the world kind of told, hey, Ukraine, you've got these nukes, please give them up because you don't know what you're doing with them, and they're not secure enough, and everybody's a bit anxious. So the world pressured Ukraine to give up their nukes. And in exchange for Ukraine giving up their nukes that were left over from the Soviet Union, the US told them we would guarantee their borders. Mm-hmm. We told them that. So part of this is us trying to keep our end of the bargain without getting directly militarily involved, because nobody has the appetite for the US getting directly involved with yet another war somewhere else right now when we aren't directly provoked or attacked, right?
Right.
If this were back in the 70s, you might have been able, swap this out for Vietnam, you might have been able to convince people to start bombing or put boots on the ground. But the US has completely blown their credibility after Vietnam, after all the other wars between Vietnam and Iraq Part 1, Grenada and whatnot. And then Iraq won.
There
Iraq
failed
two.
invasions in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I mean, we forget that we abandoned the Kurds who were supportive of us. I mean, there's lots of things that we do. This
Abandoned
country
the
is not
Kurds.
innocent. So let's not, act like we don't have some reason for people to be aggravated with us. The part of the problem is, though, we have to keep in mind that other countries have the right to be autonomous. Does that give them the right to commit human rights crimes? No, but then why are we picking and choosing which countries we care about and which countries we don't? And at what price? It's a human rights crime, as far as I'm concerned, for people in this country to not have water. Isn't that a basic need?
It is. And yeah, so let's talk about this theory of yours, which I do believe. Let's say we are able to push the Russians completely out of Ukraine somehow. Probably not going to happen unless the US starts using our own jets and fighter pilots and bombs and drones and whatnot to take on the Russians directly, which we're trying to avoid doing. But it's like, if that's inevitably where we're going, then y'all need to just do it. Let's say that happens. What happens then? Of course, we put bases all up and down Ukraine. We call them NATO bases, but they're mostly staffed by US personnel. Right now, Poland's part of NATO. We have bases in Poland.
Yes, we do.
Sweden's going to join. Finland's going to join NATO. They're gonna have some
unprecedented, by the way.
Putin, this is what you get for his aggression with Ukraine. Of course, Finland is going to rush to join NATO now because Finland borders Russia on the complete opposite side of Europe. And yeah, so he put all of his chess pieces on Ukraine. So Finland's going to come in and say, hey, like, we want to join NATO and we want to join it right now. So that application is being rushed, and it is a foregone conclusion at this point. And what's Putin going to do? Invade Finland and tell them that they can't join NATO either? Because you're talking about its autonomy. Finland should be allowed to join NATO if they want.
This is compromising Europe in a way that we haven't seen since World War II. But something else to keep in mind is that the Ukraine is a predominantly ethnically white Russian country. I mean, 1 out of 6 people are ethnic Russians. 1 out of 3 speak both Russian and Ukrainian.
Yeah, they're not just Caucasian; they're Slavic.
You're right, and there is a dominant portion of the country that is sympathetic to Nazi ideology, because you have to remember the Nazis are the ones who freed them from the strong arm of the Soviet power at the time.
See, that's the part that I'm interested in figuring out how much of that is real and how much of that is Russian propaganda, because they're, just like we said we were going in for Operation Iraqi Freedom to free, to bring some freedom to Iraq, just like the Italians, when they invaded Ethiopia, they said they were going in to stop slavery. Okay. Weapons of mass destruction, slavery. Gulf of Tonkin, we're going in there to stop communism in Vietnam. The Russians claim they're going into Ukraine to denazify Ukraine. And I believe
that part is untrue. What is true is that there is a dominant Nazi ideology that bleeds through Ukrainian culture. I mean, they lean white. There's no disputing this.
Just because they're white doesn't mean they're Nazis.
No, not necessarily. But what does make me think that they are, at the very least, sensitive to the ideology, or if you will, it's not a deal breaker, is how they treated the Africans who were in their country studying at the time, who were trying to get out.
Oh.
They wouldn't let them on the trains. Don't get it twisted. They were like Ukrainians first. Interesting.
And at what point, what's the difference? Do we draw a difference at all between white supremacy and Nazi ideology?
Is there a huge difference? I mean, what's the difference?
I think there's a difference between an ethnocentric racist and a full tilt Nazi who believes, like, literally it's okay to kill anyone who's, for the sake of purity of the white race, we want to kill anyone it's okay to kill anyone who's not white, including Jewish people.
Yeah, let's see.
There's one thing if you're just like a racist bigot. There's another thing if you're a racist bigot who is like white power. It's another thing if you believe kill everybody who isn't white. Like, that's you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, levels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. There's levels of everything, but there have been enough reports that have been substantiated, one of which was reported in NBC News in March 2022, where at the Polish border, Africans were not allowed to board the trains out of the region. They were picking Ukrainians. They were saying Ukrainians only, according to reports. And they were not checking the passports of Ukrainians nearly in the same extensive focus as they were to the African citizens who were living in the Ukraine at the time and have consistently reported racist discrimination and abuse at the borders.
Interesting. Now, is that
also according to Reuters in 2022, the African Union announced that it was receiving hundreds and hundreds of reports that African citizens in the Ukraine were being refused the right to cross the borders to safety.
Now, were they being blocked? Were they being blocked by, say, like, by the country they were trying to go into, or were they being blocked by Ukrainians?
They were being blocked by Ukrainians in getting out of the country.
Got you. Okay.
They were getting Ukrainians out first. So when they had trains full of people getting out, they were not letting Africans and gypsies, if you will, go on until after all the Ukrainians got on. I mean, look, everybody's trying to get out of here, right?
So that's definitely ethnocentrism, potentially even xenophobia. Does it rise?
And I'm not saying that they're all Nazis. What I'm saying is Nazism is most likely not a deal breaker in their relationships with one another.
Interesting.
I mean, they might not like it, but they're not going to be like, oh my God, I'm standing my ground against this. I mean, it's the Ukraine. The majority of the country is white.
Interesting. How do you think this ends?
It doesn't on this episode of Raw Food.